living. Friends, let's talk some Torah. Today is a very specific moment in the Jewish calendar. For some of us, it just stops us in our tracks. In fact, I'm watching on multiple screens right now the 2-minute siren in the state of Israel that is sounded throughout the country on Yom HaShoah, um, and people just stop. Highways stop. People stop. And of all the Torah that we need to learn today, it is the Torah of remembering. The Torah of remembering something that is an anchor in Jewish history, no less than the destruction of the temple or the Inquisition and expulsion from Spain, no less than the miraculous moments of Jewish history as well. What is incredibly important for us to hold in our hearts right now is the power of being part of an interconnected people, one generation to the next, that stands ready to bear testimony. Because ultimately, we are, and I say this with an incredibly heavy heart and with very full eyes, we are the last who will hear survivors in person. My children will be the last children to hear direct testimony from survivors of the Shoah. That is a huge responsibility. And as the famous historian Yosef Yerushalmi once said in the one sentence of his book on Jewish memory making and history, the one sentence that mentioned the Holocaust, these are his words: "The Holocaust has already engendered more historical research than any single event in Jewish history. But I have no doubt that whatever its image is being shaped not at the historian's anvil, but in the novelist's crucible, which means the stories that we tell." So, my friends, I'm asking you this question right now because every one of us has a story. If you're of Sephardic background, it's a different kind of story, but you nonetheless are part of a people. If you're Ashkenazi, you are no less part of this people. If you are, as I am, fourth generation American, you are no less a part of this people. I share, again with full eyes, that among my many trips to Israel, to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, when I re-entered that space and they had just rededicated the bigger museum that you can visit now, I went to the lab and I remember looking up my family's name, shocked, to find my son's name as an ancestor I'd never heard of. We are all one family and we are all in this moment together. I want to read to you some testimony, a story that was recorded by Rabbi Dr. Michael Birnbaum. It was just distributed today by the American Jewish University. I had something different in mind to share today, but I'm going to be sharing his words. Before I do so, I'd like to do two things to frame the moment. Number one, why today? You know that there's an International Holocaust Memorial Day. That day marks the day that Auschwitz was liberated. Incredibly important. But that was a day when Auschwitz was liberated and someone finally came to the aid of the Jew. That's not today. Yom HaShoah is a different day. Yom HaShoah marks the days of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. This is 80 years since April of 1943. This is the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. That was a day that we fought back. You're going to hear the reflection of a historian in a moment. But this is a day where we didn't let anyone else define the heroes that we would be, that we didn't let anyone take away the dignity of being human. That's how we remember today. In Israel, it's not called Yom HaShoah alone. It's called Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura, Day of Holocaust and Heroism. Today is a day where we stand not only for tribal survival, but for our family and friends. We stand in defense of the Jewish people. And as Jews, that gives us the power to stand in defense of people. This is what Rabbi Dr. Michael Birnbaum wrote. 80 years ago, in April 1943, the Jews of Warsaw rose in armed resistance to their German occupiers. In the free world, Jews were celebrating Passover, the historic journey from slavery in Egypt and the journey through the desert to the Promised Land millennia ago. In ghettos of occupied Poland, even in the death camps, Jews were eating the bread of affliction for years. Yet even they could dream of freedom. Now we are slaves. Next year. Will there be a next year, they wondered? Will there be a next day? Never had Jews retold the story of Exodus in such darkness. In Warsaw, more than 265,000 Jews had already been deported to Treblinka, a Nazi death camp where only a handful survived. There were no skeletons in Treblinka. They were all sent immediately to their death. The old had been deported, and the young, families and communities, entire blocks, whole neighborhoods, all those who remained in the ghetto understood that deportation equaled death. The Germans, aided by Ukrainian troops, surrounded the ghetto. A Judenrein, a Jew-free Warsaw, was to be Hitler's present for his 54th birthday, Yom HaShoah. May his name be erased. But the desperate ghetto Jews understood that all would die unless... The Jewish underground proclaimed, "Jewish masses, the hour is drawing near. You must be prepared to resist. Not a single Jew should go to the railroad cars. Our slogan must be, all are ready to die as human beings." How desperate was their plight? We saw ourselves as a Jewish underground whose fate was a tragic one, the first to fight. For our hour had come, without any sign of hope or rescue. With nothing to lose, everything had been lost. Jewish youth organizations rose in rebellion with a few rifles and guns. Armed with homemade Molotov cocktails, they forced the Germans to retreat. Zivia Lubetkin, a Warsaw Ghetto resistance leader, recalled, "When the Germans came to our posts and marched by, and we threw those hand grenades and bombs and saw German blood pouring over the streets of Warsaw, there was much rejoicing. The tomorrow did not worry us. The rejoicing amongst the Jewish fighters was great, and see the wonder and miracle. Those German heroes retreated afraid and terrorized from Jewish bombs and hand grenades homemade." Their victory, however dramatic, was short-lived. The Germans returned, and when they could not prevail, they burned the ghetto building by building, block by block. The Jews continued to fight, the few against the mighty, and they held out for almost a month. Longer than some of the armies of European countries. Still, Mordechai Analevich wrote to his friend Yitzchak Zuckerman, "What we have experienced cannot be described in words. We are aware of one thing only: what has happened has exceeded our dreams. The Germans ran twice from the ghetto. I have the feeling that great things are happening, that what we have dared is of great importance. What really matters is that the dream of my life has become true. Jewish self-defense in the Warsaw Ghetto has become a fact. Jewish armed resistance and retaliation have become a reality. I have been witness to the magnificent heroic struggle of the Jewish fighters." But Analevich did not have the final word. On May 16th, the German commander blew up the Tlomaki Street Synagogue, the great synagogue of Warsaw, and wrote to his supporters, "The Jewish quarter of Warsaw is no longer." General Jürgen Straub captured and deported those Jews who had not been killed. Still, a few escaped through the sewers to continue the fight. Still, he too did not have the final word. That judgment, friends, that judgment belongs to history. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was nothing less than a revolution in Jewish history. Jews had resisted the Nazis with armed force. The significance and symbolic resonance of the uprising went far beyond the numbers of those who fought and died. It may not have changed the course of the war or the fate of European Jews, but it may have changed the character of the Jews. Friends, I'm going to ask you to look at the Times of Israel, look on your social media for images of Israel standing still with a national 2 minutes of solidarity, of silence, remembering the victims of the Shoah and standing strong and tall as Jews in the world. There is a lot to say, and there is no time to say it because our lifetimes are too short for the testimony we are called to share. But you and I have a responsibility. So what I'm asking you to do is not only reflect on the day, acknowledge it ritually, light a candle, stand still for 2 minutes of quiet. Share on social media what it means for you to be part of a Jewish community, proud, heroic, honest, aware, and a friend to all. We have a lot of work to do. Today is a day of memory. I'm going to take 20 seconds of silence right now and invite you to do it with me. I'll watch the time. May the memory of the 6 million be for a blessing. May we, their children, take on the mantle of testimony in their names. Amen. To mark Yom HaShoah, I'm not going to sing our way into today. I'm going to invite us to do something meaningful, quiet perhaps, public perhaps, something different to go into today. Bless you, friends. I'll see you tomorrow.